Hey, what's going on, Ram fans? Rams Up update here for you. February 21st, 2025. News to share about an hour at Los Angeles Rams. We're going to get into some news and notes, talk about a few random things. And those random things, a couple of them, anyways, will set up my sixth mock draft. We'll do a mock draft. We'll execute a mock draft based on some of the issues we're talking here, some assumptions that we're going to dare to make going into this draft here. But before we get to that, let's talk about a few things of interest. And hey, I know a lot of you probably aren't hockey fans, but this Four Nations face-off, man, if we can get beyond the battle of the national anthems, I'm not going to get into that. What a great few days of hockey this was. Finland, Sweden, the United States, and Canada came down to an overtime game between the USA and Canada, with Canada prevailing. And I tell you, this was made for TV. It was really fun. Now, I'm no hockey expert. What I am going to say is this wasn't wide open, exciting, exhilarating displays of speed and puck handling. It was pretty physical, and it was kind of like a lot of grind line type hockey, I must say. And, and that's okay. It was still really fun to watch and very tense. And if we just look at it from a sports perspective, this was a really good event. Unfortunate USA came out on the short end there, but still some great hockey. And if you missed it, you missed some really good stuff. It was fun to watch, and it couldn't have ended well. I won't say it couldn't have ended better. Well, it certainly could have, but overtime hockey, that's fun stuff. It doesn't get much more exciting than that. And, Canada, Connor McDavid, the final shot to win it, kind of a bummer for you at Team USA, but still really good fun, a lot of fun. And it's much better than an all-star week, which this replaced apparently. And I wasn't even aware this was going to happen. And then I started to see some social media blasts about it. And I tuned in for the championship game, and I was not disappointed. Well, a little disappointed, but from a sports perspective, you had to enjoy this. Let's see, episode 69. So let's talk about a player. It's episode 669, I should say. Let's talk about a player who wore number 69, Sebastian Joseph-Day, a defensive lineman out of Rutgers. And the Rams drafted him in the 6th round of the 2018 draft. And that was a pretty good pick, pretty solid pick there by Les Snead, right? Another 6th rounder that really paid off. He's played in 2 Super Bowls, one for the Rams, one for the 49ers, came out on the short end both times. He played those first 3 seasons for the Rams, then went over to the Chargers, only played in 2 games for the 49ers, and then on to the Titans. And he's a free agent. And he's a guy, at 6'4", 310 pounds. He's a guy that could fill a role for the Rams, another ex-Ram, including Greg Gaines, 2 guys that could come in and fill an area of need with Bobby Brown, the free agent. Maybe they bring Brown back, we'll see. But Sebastian Joseph-Day has played some good football over his career, and I think his best days were with the Rams, really. And he's never going to be the guy along a defensive line, but if you want a supplemental big body to help you out, rotate in, you can do a lot worse than Sebastian Joseph-Day. 39 games as a Ram, 38 starts, 137 tackles, and 6 sacks. Sebastian Joseph-Day, our number 69 for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, Daniel Jeremiah got into some discussions about the Rams and their possibilities in the draft. By the way, if you're following along on the podcast audio only, you have some supplemental videos here augmenting this discussion if you care to jump over there sometime. And if you do, please subscribe, like the videos. So Daniel Jeremiah, the first thing he did was compliment the Rams on their ability to go out and find talent in every round of the draft. And at number 26 overall, he likes 2 wide receivers for the Rams, Emeka Egbuka of Ohio State and Matthew Golden of Texas. Now, what did Jeremiah say? He said Emeka Egbuka makes sense. He'd be a great fit for somebody that wants plug and play for a team that's ready to win. Sounds like our Rams. Same for Matthew Golden. Those would be guys I love for the Rams. And do a quick comparison of them. Let's see, Egbuka comes in at 6'1", 205. Golden 6 feet, 195. Now, Lance Zierlein, the NFL analyst, he compares Egbuka to Jackson Smith-Njigba, and he compares Golden to Chris Olave, and Jeremiah actually Zierlein likes Golden a little bit more. Pretty even though in his evaluation. They're, prospects for succeeding in the NFL. The one thing that Golden may have on Egbuka is the primetime aspect of his game. He has really stepped up in big time games in a big way. So he's got that ability to really shine when it counts. But these are two guys. I don't know if they're going to be there at number 26. Could the Rams end up drafting, let's say number 21? We'll talk about that in a second. But two wide receivers. I'll be honest with you, I think Golden might be there at 26, despite how Zierlein feels about these two guys. I think Egbuka is going to come off the draft board first, and Golden more likely going to be there more likely than Egbuka to be there at 26, but kind of borderline 50-50 chance he would be there for the Rams. And speaking of, I made a sly reference to drafting number 21 overall, Jordan Schultz, NFL Insider, quoting him here. The belief is a first-round pick would probably be the asking price should the Rams choose to make a deal for Matthew Stafford. And I know a lot of you are probably begging that I quit talking about this. It's really hard to do, though, because the rumors are out there. And I think the Rams are just doing a really good job of kind of gaming the system here, taking away some leverage from Stafford. Stafford wants to be in LA. His wife wants to be in LA. And the Rams would like him to be in LA. But if the Staffords are going to play this game, Rams are going to play it too, suggesting, at least they're certainly not dismissing the possibility that he could be traded. And the reason I mentioned that number 21 pick, the more I think about it, if someone's going to trade for Matthew Stafford and giving up a first round pick, I don't think it's going to be one of those teams in the top 3, 4, or 5. Now, that could happen if some other picks are swapped as part of the package, but the simplest trade would be a team like the Steelers at number 21 overall. And I think Stafford would make sense for them. I don't know if it makes sense for the way the Steelers have conducted their business over the years, but I could see that, right? And maybe some additional picks get swapped as well, and that would land the Rams at number 21 overall. But hey, again, I'm not advocating this. I'm not predicting this. More or less the messenger here. It's fun to talk about these possibilities, and that's how I feel about this. If the Rams were to make a trade and move on from Matthew Stafford, I'd get over it pretty quickly, get excited about the prospects of the new path for this Rams team, the path back to the Super Bowl with a completely different look. And we know that Les Snead and Sean McVay are fully capable of making that happen with or without Matthew Stafford. I'm not buying this. Hey, if Stafford is traded, we're done for 4 years. Stan Kroenke, Kevin Demoff, Les Snead, and Sean McVay are having none of that. The Rams will remain competitive one way or another, and I believe that very strongly. So what else do we got? There is the rumor, the free agency rumor that the Rams are interested in Eagles linebacker Zack Baun, 6'3", 225 pounds. Now, he was drafted by the Saints, played 4 years there, only had 14 starts, mainly playing on the outside, because a little light for the inside, everybody thought anyways. So 4 years in New Orleans, 88 tackles, signs a 1-year deal with the Eagles, 150 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, a Pro Bowler, and man, he's on the open market once again, and the Rams are interested in him. And when I do my mock draft here coming up here in a second, I will be taking linebacker off the needs list just as an experiment. If we go out and sign Zack Baun, whether it's true or not, who knows? Again, if these rumors are out there, it could be just that, a rumor, clickbait on the internet, but there seems to be some validity to it. The Rams would be in, and it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Play him next to Omar Speights. Rams would be in a really good place with their defense taking one step closer to being an elite unit. One or two things they need to address if they were to bring Zack Baun on board, but man, looking like a really solid defense. All right, before we get into this mock draft, let's talk about a few things. What are my draft needs? Well, on offense, left tackle. And, for this mock draft, though, I'm going to assume Alaric Jackson is back. So maybe not so much a high priority, although I still think we need to draft a young left tackle at some point. We need a wide receiver, absolutely, and a change of pace running back. And the reason I added that is there seems to be a consensus among Ram fans that we don't need a Kyren Williams, Blake Corum clone. We need a change of pace, a guy that can get vertical, go the distance, outrun defenders, that type of thing, a home run hitter at the running back position. So I added that here. I agree with that consensus, and potentially a quarterback, although that could wait till next year. So, and I think it probably will. I'm assuming Matthew Stafford comes back, by the way, for this. Alaric Jackson and Matthew Stafford both come back. So that kind of, lessens the need for those two positions. I left them on there, though. But the highest priorities on offense, wide receiver, and a change of pace running back. I also left tight end off because right now Tyler Higbee, he's returning. That could change. This is a science experiment, without the Rams adding Zack Baun, Alaric Jackson, and Matthew Stafford coming back. That's what I'm rolling with here. On defense, nose tackle and cornerback appear to be the biggest needs. I'm assuming Bobby Brown does not come back, and Ahkello Witherspoon also moves on. So, even if Witherspoon came back, I'd love to see this team draft a cornerback high. So what am I rolling with here? Wide receiver, change of pace running back, nose tackle, cornerback are the biggest needs. And, we'll sprinkle in a bunch of best player available type guys, and special teams. No needs there. I feel like everybody that performed well last year is coming back. Ethan Evans, Alex Ward, Joshua Carty, Xavier Smith, Jordan Whittington. They'll surely draft some guys that could contribute on special teams, in the mid to late rounds as well, but don't see a real dire need there. So let's talk about a change of pace running back. Who are they? And I wanted to do a little bit of research this time rather than just diving in and not really knowing what the heck I'm doing, as has been apparent a couple of times in previous mock drafts. Hopefully getting better at this. And by the way, I hope to have some real draft experts on board in the next few weeks. We can start talking about some of these needs of the Rams and who might fit. But I went through did a little bit of research on the running backs that might qualify as change of pace running backs and might be available for the Rams at some point. And I'm thinking no earlier than the end of the third round. Right now, the Rams have the 100th pick overall. That would be the comp pick for the Raheem Morris hire. That's not set in stone. Could be somewhere around 100. I think the Rams might draft a running back at that point or later, and it may not be a change of pace running back, but for this experiment, that's what we're rolling with. And there's a bunch of guys that'll be off the board by then, but here's 4 guys that I might be eyeballing. RJ Harvey out of University of Central Florida, 5'8", 207 pounds, ran for 1,500 yards and 22 TDs last season. Basul Tutin out of Virginia Tech, 5'10", 209 pounds, a high school track athlete, Now, I did an experimental mock draft to see where these guys are coming off the board, and he was not there at the end of the third round, which surprised me. Jordan James out of Oregon, he's considered a one-cut back that gets vertical really quickly. Doesn't necessarily have the great top end speed, but I think he qualifies as a change of pace back, and he would be available there in the third or fourth round most likely. I mocked him to the Rams once before already. Some folks on the YouTube channel commented that running backs out of Oregon always disappoint. Maybe some truth to that. And I added this last guy, Rayshawn Luke out of Arizona, 5'9", and a 2.2 Atwell-ish, 172 pounds, but blazing speed. Now, I don't know if he's going to get drafted at all. He probably won't. I just wanted to mention him because this guy, he's the fastest running back in the class by far. Maybe going to do his damage as a returner, perhaps. Certainly qualifies as a change of pace back, but can he hold up? I have no idea. And I think the Rams are going to shy away from guys of that stature for a while, but Rayshawn Luke, a guy to be aware of, maybe a priority free agent. Now let's get into this mock draft, and those were the guidelines here, right? Wide receiver, change of pace running back, cornerback, nose tackle, not necessarily in that order. Probably want to draft a couple of wide receivers, may make a trade. We'll see how that goes. I'm not going to push for a trade, but if one falls on our lap, we will consider it. Okay, I have this set up for you, the NFL mock draft database. What are the guidelines again? We're looking for a wide receiver, a cornerback, a nose tackle, a change of pace running back. Zack Baun has been signed. Alaric Jackson is coming back. Matthew Stafford is coming back. Bobby Brown, we don't know. These are the assumptions for this draft. None of what I just said is necessarily true, but that's what our going in assumptions are for this particular mock draft number 6. And when we get to our number 26 pick, I'm not going to try to trade up before that pick, but we may try to trade down depending on what this draft presents us with. And remember, we had those 3 change of pace running backs we may take a shot at some point, late third, fourth, fifth round, if we can add a fifth round pick, sixth round, that type of thing. Let's roll. Let's get this going. Starting this off, you can follow along the picks along the top there if you care to. I know it's hard to follow real time. Try to summarize what's going on here when we get to the Rams' 26th pick. And we have a trade offer here with the Eagles. I really like this. I've been seeing a lot of trades with the Kansas City Chiefs moving down, or moving up, I should say. What is on the board for us, though? I don't care. We're dropping 6 picks and adding that second rounder that we desperately need. Let's see. That's the only trade offer we have. So I'm going to go ahead and accept this. I'm not going to go trade crazy here, but the Eagles, even though we signed away their linebacker already, are willing to deal with us, and we accept that trade. Year around 4th round pick. Well, what are we going to do about that? We're probably not getting fair value for this mock, but we'll go ahead and add that 2nd round pick. And Josh Simmons and Luther Burden were both there, and those are guys we would consider. I'm not going to accept any more trades. Let's get some picks going here. We'll reject all these. Now, what is still on the board for us? Well, let's look at, the best player available is the 26th ranked player, cornerback out of Texas, and Zack Baun is, probably pronouncing that wrong, and he's liked by a lot of experts, team leader, has a nose for the ball, makes splash plays over and over again, and he can play safety too. That much I know about him. Now, Campbell, the linebacker, if we had not signed Zack Baun already, would be a consideration. Then we have the cornerback. Let's see how the wide receivers went so far. And 4 of them are off the board, including Egbuka and Golden, 2 of the guys we talked about. Elik Ayamaner, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong too. He's a Canadian wide receiver at Stanford, and you read his bio and he sounds like a Rams wide receiver, but if you're looking to break the mold of Rams wide receivers, he's not the guy. But you're going to love this guy. He is he fights on the field for everything. Reminded me a lot of Puka, just an angry football player, very good route runner, blocking, does everything. And I would consider him if he's there at number 64. Let's look at those cornerbacks again. You know, Barron's very tempting, and he probably in most drafts might go before this. And Ravel out of East Carolina has been dropping a little bit. I'm sure he was higher in past drafts, and Benjamin Morrison as well. And let's look at the defensive line. The thing about defensive line is I really think the Rams can get the types of players they need later in the draft. Darius Alexander really stood out at the Senior Bowl. By the way, I talked about him last podcast, I think. I'm going to go back to the big board here, and I'm going to take the best player available in a position in need. Very versatile, and the Rams love those versatile defensive backs, and I'm going to select Barron, and I get an A for that. So that checks one box. We still need a wide receiver badly. And if the Stanford wide receiver, I tactfully avoid saying his last name. We're going to reject these and reject these. I want to draft that wide receiver. Boy, and Jalen Royals at number 66 overall is maybe a little bit more of what the Rams need as far as someone a little bit different than what they already have. Actually, Royals, Higgins, Beck out of TCU. Wow, a lot of really good options here. But I am going to take the Stanford wide receiver. And I may, Royals is really tempting, though. But I've drafted Royals to the Rams a couple of times. And I think I drafted Higgins to the Rams once as well. So I'm going to take the Stanford wide receiver, and I get an A+ for that. So 2 of our needs. And now let's start paying attention to the running backs and see if any of those change of pace guys that we talked about are showing up. Now I expect it. I'm going to reject all further trades. And well, if I see one that's a real simple trade and we add a 5th rounder, I might take advantage of that. So the change of pace running backs, Scadabo is the 49er fan running back. He's a bigger back. I know a lot of Ram fans would like the Rams to add a bigger back, a beast mode type, hybrid halfback, fullback type player. But I'm not in favor of that. I just don't think the Rams have to take someone else off the field for a player like that. Doesn't make sense to me in a Sean McVay offense. Now, Tuden is there. It may be it's definitely a little bit early for him. And I have a pick. I have a pick in 10 picks. Would he still be there? A little bit risky. Let's go back to the defensive line. And the defensive line is guys I have not to be quite honest, researched as much. And Caldwell out of Oregon is like a 340-pound nose tackle. We got Joshua Farmer out of Florida State, Jordan Birch. We go back to the best available once more, and I'm going to go ahead and select Birch, and I got to find out more about him. I think I drafted him once before. Hopefully he's a bigger body. Hey, I don't have all the answers yet. We'll get better at this. And I am, by the way, as I mentioned earlier, I think we're going to have some draft experts, some guys that know these players much better than I do, help us get a little bit smarter and can advise. I want them on board to talk to us about nose tackles, interior defensive linemen for the Rams, wide receivers, cornerbacks, and change of pace backs. Those four things I'm really interested in getting smarter on. Now, is our running back still there? Let's go look. And he is at 100. I'm going to go ahead and take 210 out of Virginia Tech. And I've hit the four positions. So I'm happy about that. And after this, I still think I passed on Quinn Ewers, by the way. I'm sure you saw that if you're watching on the YouTube channel. I don't think he's could be wrong on that. Is he a guy that we could go to next year as our, if Stafford moves on after next year, is that a guy that we want in the house this year to groom for that as our next quarterback? I don't know. I'd rather wait till next year, to be honest with you. There are some quarterbacks. Well, let's look at the quarterbacks. There are a lot of guys there that are worth getting a little excited about that we can get a little bit later. So what are we doing here? Let's look at our picks. We have the cornerback, the wide receiver, the defensive lineman, and the running back. So we've gone 2 defense, 2 offense, and I'd still be interested in adding a second wide receiver. I suspect the Rams are going to bring in a free agent. They have to. Are they going to go with 2 rookies? Jordan Whittington, a second-year guy, Xavier Smith, and Puka. That's about what they would have. And if we look at the wide receiver groups, there's Nick Nash, who I really like. Pat Bryant and Ja'Cory Brooks were both Puka power picks. Guys Paul liked, but I think it's still a little bit early for them. Let's go back to the all list. We got a quarterback and a wide receiver, Chris Paul, a linebacker, another cornerback, another defensive lineman. Man, not sure where to go here. So we need to do a live stream on this, and you guys can, viewers can help me out here. But I am going to go with, I don't know what I'm going to do here. How about the offensive line, offensive tackles? Ajani Cornelius, I'm going to go ahead and draft Cornelius. Didn't realize he was there. I said we don't need a left tackle. At least it's not a high priority, but to bring in a guy like Cornelius as insurance, Big Rob's getting a little older. We need to start thinking about who our next right tackle is. Feel really good about our interior, not so much about our tackle. So I'm going to go ahead and draft Cornelius. And I think that's a solid pick. I almost missed that. I would have been disappointed in myself. This is harder than you think, doing this on the fly, trying to make these decisions. Most of these players I know a little bit about, enough to go ahead and draft them. Birch, we'll check him out when we're done here. I'll give you some feedback on all these picks, additional feedback when we're done here, or another podcast, I should say. Going to look at tight ends here. No, none of the players that we've really talked about with Paul. We did a close look at all the tight ends that he liked in the draft, and I don't see any of them here. Let's go back to the all list, and we have a tight end. Oh, now, Moliki Matavo has been climbing up the boards, and a really interesting case. Paul did not talk about him, but he's a guy that I think 2 months ago people would have said he's going to be an undrafted free agent, and suddenly there's been a lot of interest in him, and we need to get another tight end in the house. And there were rumors that the Rams had spoken to him, had talked to him. So let's go ahead and make that pick. Are these picks predictions, or are these picks who I would pick? It's a little bit of both. And this one's a prediction that the Rams may take a flyer on Matavo late in the draft. So we'll go ahead and add the tight end. And let's see, Disneyland getting some free ads here. Now, where are we? We have two more picks back to back. Our last two picks, 203 and 204, and we're really going to look at the best players available. We have another cornerback. We have not picked. Pat Bryant is still there, and Nick Nash. And I don't remember offhand what Paul liked about Pat Bryant. I know that he loved him, though, and that's good enough for me. All three of these guys, Bryant, Nash, Brooks, I'd be happy to have on this Rams roster. So I'll go ahead and take the highest rate up board by quite a bit on this board, actually. Number 157 overall, drafted him at 203. Pat Bryant, the wide receiver out of Illinois, I should say. I don't know where that extra S came from. I should know better than that. And we'll go back to all. Jordan James is still there. Wow. And we got an interior offensive lineman out of Alabama A&M, Mello Dotson, another cornerback. Now, this is the deal with cornerback. I feel like we got a lot of guys. We added one. Our first pick was a cornerback. Would I be interested in adding a second skill player on defense as well? Absolutely. And I'm going to go ahead and draft Mello Dotson. Passing on interior offensive line this draft, we have some guys that we can plug in there. We really do. I think there's a couple of guys on our roster, Dylan McMahon, Warren McClendon, I think could fill in there in a heartbeat. And don't forget, we have Jonah Jackson, I guess, as a second stringer. So I'm going to go ahead and draft Mello Dotson. And that'll be our last pick. Can't see the grade there. We'll wrap this up here in a second. And that is mock draft number 6 for our Los Angeles Rams. And we'll look at all our picks here in a minute. Let's see. According to them, I got an A for Barron, the cornerback out of Texas, an A+ for the wide receiver out of Stafford. And the grades don't mean much. I'm just reading here for you. And then Jordan Birch, the defensive lineman out of Oregon. And Bayushal Tutin. I do not know how to pronounce his name, and I apologize for that. I'll have to go look at some film, and hopefully someone calls out his first name for me. That's how we roll here. Got a B for that. Ajani Cornelius, the offensive tackle out of Oregon, potential replacement for Rob Havenstein, backup Alaric Jackson. They only gave me a C+ for the tight end, and that's probably fair enough. He could go undrafted, actually. B+ for the wide receiver out of Illinois, Pat Bryant, and a B+ for the cornerback, Mello Dotson. Mello Dotson, the cornerback out of Kansas. Some good cornerbacks coming out of Kansas lately. And we'll have 2 Dotsons on the team, so we'll have to put a first initial in front of those on those uniforms, I guess. So that's my draft. Not sure how you feel about it. Not sure how I feel about it. But there's some players on here I really like, though. And this, of course, was on those assumptions. Zack Baun in the house, Alaric Jackson, Matthew Stafford in the house, and we add these players as well. Hope you enjoyed it. Out here from Rams Up.